Hi, rock stars. So we've been dealing with this toxic air in North and South Carolina caused by Robert Krafts Paper Mill, New Indy Containerboard, Catawba, LLC, for a little over 2 years now. For a recap, the EPA approved a consent decree mid-October of 2022. DHEC approved their consent orders 11/23/2022, which included the upgraded stripping equipment to treat the toxins that go to the wastewater treatment plant. But they gave them until 2025 to install it and have it operational. What really gets me is not even a month and a half after the EPA had a federal judge push through this consent decree, they have now released 19 potential violations New Indy may have committed, even before the switchover to this new production. So it used to be bleach paper, now it's brown paper. My problem with that is the EPA has now stolen our right to comment on these 19 potential violations, stolen our right to notify the federal judge and the Department of Justice. And it's just ludicrous that they would wait. These are federal and state violations. So if it's before the switchover, who is not doing their job and monitoring these annual, semi-annual, biannual reports? Who? So let's get into it. On December 5th, Region 4 of the EPA, which is headed by Daniel Blackman, sent this letter to New Indy for a teleconference to discuss these potential violations. It states the EPA has concerns that New Indy made physical changes to and changes in the method of operation of its pulp and paper mill in Catawba, South Carolina, that may have failed to comply with the South Carolina State Implementation Plan's prevention of significant deterioration for multiple regulated pollutants. Yet the EPA and DHEC are only monitoring for hydrogen sulfide. New Indy may have failed to comply with the emission standards and the monitoring, record keeping, and reporting requirements of the National Emission Standards for Hazardous Air Pollutants from the pulp and paper industry. They gave New Indy 7 days to schedule this conference, or at least a receipt of letter. I'd really like an update from the EPA because I'm really sick and tired of them doing things and then never telling the community an update of what's happened. Some of these violations are before New Indy even purchased the mill. So they have an ad going around on Fox and on YouTube where they want to talk about the employees are like family and everybody does so good and yada, yada, yada. And I won't post it because we're not going to have their YouTube be monetized so they can make money off of poisoning us all. That's my personal opinion. We're not doing that. But I find it very odd that these employees would make such bold claims when they're not even satisfactory at doing the job they're supposed to be doing before New Indy even took over. Number one, remember when the mayor of Waxhaw, Ron Pappas, used one of his town halls and talked about New Indy, about how it was just a minor modification? Well, number one states New Indy Project Columbia may constitute a major modification, and New Indy may have commenced construction and operation of a major modification without complying with new source review, prevention of significant deterioration requirements. Specifically, information available to the EPA shows that Project Columbia involved a complete change in the method of operation at the facility that included a conversion to producing only unbleached paper, a shortened cook time in the digester. Remember that CAPA increase from 30 to 90 that we talked about in the beginning? An increase in CAPA, an increase in the amount of virgin pulp produced per day, and a change in the method of treating processed condensates. So when you look at a change in the amount of virgin pulp produced per day, they claim, that it's only 1,825 air-dried tons a day, but that's what it was back in 2006. That's what triggered a review. So I guess I'm confused. They want us to believe that they're still producing the same amount as Resolute Forest Products was in 2006. I don't believe that for a second. Then it says, information available to the EPA shows that Project Columbia also involved at least the following physical changes. 1, change to the Kraft pulp mill unit, which potentially would result in significant increase of sulfur dioxide, which is SO2, from the combination boiler. Number 2, changes to the chemical recovery unit, which potentially would result in a significant increase of nitrogen dioxide, NOx, from the recovery furnaces. And number 3, physical changes to the wastewater treatment system, which potentially would result in significant increase of volatile organic compounds. Now, the wastewater treatment plant is where most of the odors are coming from, and is where the hydrogen peroxide is being sent to treat the foul condensate that is not being stripped by the steam stripper. Information available to the EPA shows that Project Columbia may have caused significant net emissions increases of NOx, VOCs, and SO2, total reduced sulfur, which is the hydrogen sulfide, dimethyl sulfide, dimethyl disulfide, and methyl mercaptane, and hydrogen sulfide from the combination boilers, the recovery furnaces, and the wastewater treatment system at the New Indy facility. So the combination boilers are going to let off, into the atmosphere. The wastewater treatment plant is the lagoons, and then the recovery furnaces as well. There is paperwork somewhere that we have that shows all the different stacks with, I don't think it shows what comes out of them, but we could find that. Number 2 is under potential violation of the National Emissions Standards for hazardous air pollutants from the pulp and paper industry. This specific requirement was due to be in place no later than April 16th of 2001. When did the original steam stripper get installed? 2001. Why do we think DHEC made them put it back right away when this became an issue, while a few months in? Probably because it was never supposed to be removed. That's my opinion. Number 2 says, New Indy may not have achieved compliance with all the requirements of Subpart S upon startup of the new mill configuration in November 2020. According to the information provided by New Indy conducted the initial compliance demonstration for the biological treatment system in July 2021, 8 months after the startup. The biological treatment system is the wastewater treatment plant. There's a lot of things that go into that: microbes, bacteria, algae, temperatures, BOD, COD, total suspended solids, dissolved oxygen, things like that. So that is the lagoons, the biological treatment system, where they're supposed to be treating up to 92% of hazardous air pollutants. It's also where, the ASB is part of that. It's the lagoon where all that fiber was washed down to and caused all these issues. Number 3 is standards for the Kraft pulping process condensates. Based on some of New Indy's questions back in July 2022, according to a study dated December 1998, the turpentine storage tanks, which are part of the LVHC system, are vented through the flame air arrestor and then to the atmosphere. Therefore, New Indy may be failing to properly control emissions from the turpentine storage tanks. We didn't get into this system too much because most of the odor and toxic air comes from the lagoon. So nice to know that there's other issues too. Number 4, and this one really irks me, and you'll find out why after I read it. New Indy may have collected less than the total required amount of hazardous air pollutants in the pulping process condensate. New Indy identified days in January 2018, April 2019, July 2019, and August 2019 when it collected less than the required amount of hazardous air pollutants. In addition, the EPA is concerned that New Indy may have used daily pulp production amounts that were far below the average daily production rate established by the then most recent performance test to calculate the amount of HAPs collected. Specifically, lower pulp production days, less than 900 oven-dried tons of pulp per day, appear to have skewed New Indy's 15-day averages during the following months/years. And it states those same January, November 2018, February, April, July, and August of 2019, March of 2020. Keep in mind, New Indy purchased this mill in December of 2018. They were not the owners until after some of this already occurred. Why is the EPA and DHEC just finding out now something from over almost 4 years ago? It's just ridiculous. And on another note, I used to sit here and think about all of our expecting mothers in our group that we have and how stressed out I would be and how much I thought about them, because you don't know. You don't know what this is going to do to your unborn child. Well, turns out I was in my first trimester for some of these. January 2018, I was pregnant and in my first trimester. Thanks a lot, New Indy. Keep in mind that the pulping condensate is that toxic foul condensate. It's made up of, over 60 toxins. It's what is treated by the steam stripper that is inadequate. So instead of making New Indy buy a new one, like DHEC said they have to do by 2025, the EPA is allowing them to use hydrogen peroxide to treat the portion that's not stripped. And at that meeting with the law firm a few weeks back, they confirmed that the sweet smell is from the hydrogen peroxide and it creates its own VOCs. So we really have no idea what we're breathing in. None at all. Number 5, New Indy may not have removed the total required amount of HAPs in the pulping process condensate, which is the toxic foul condensate, during the following months, years, leaving days where pulp production was less than 900 oven-dried tons per day, January and October through December 2018, January through May, July through September and December of 2019, January, March, and April of 2020. New Indy failed to update the daily average effective steam ratio based on the most recent performance tests conducted in February 2018, September 2018, and October 2019. As a result, New Indy may have used non-representative steam stripper control efficiencies in calculating the amount of HAPs removed from the pulping process condensates after those tests occurred. New Indy may not have used daily pulp production amounts that were far below the average daily production rate established by then most recent performance tests to calculate the amount of HAP. So if someone had been doing their job at the EPA and DHEC and would have caught this stuff back in 2018, would this changeover have been approved? Or would they have looked into it more because they had realized that New Indy wasn't fully truthful? Because production from the changeover started in November of 2020. It was at full speed by February 2021, which is when the majority of people realized what was going on. And I guess I'm wondering if New Indy purchased in December of 2018, had these potential violations through 2019. Why did nobody at DHEC catch any of this with their reporting? I mean, is there no oversight? Would they have approved the permit had they have known? Number 6, New Indy may have experienced excess emissions greater than 10% of its total process operating time during the semi-annual reporting period. New Indy reported 600 hours of steam stripper downtime, which is 13.7% of the semi-annual period. 600 hours of steam stripper downtime, 4,380 hours in a semi-annual period. Here's the thing with that. I think we already knew that because from June 2022 until December 2022, the steam stripper has been down 6 times. It's 20 years old. It's not operating properly. They're around approximately 300 gallons per minute for the 2022 testing, and it's supposed to be at 800 gallons per minute, according to DHEC's order that says it's supposed to be at maximum capacity, but it just can't do it. New Indy may have failed to install a flow indicator on the steam stripper bypass line. That the bypass line is equipped with 3 rupture discs and a main vent valve that are continuously monitored by a computer control system, but it failed to indicate whether it had installed a flow indicator on the bypass line or to explain how else New Indy complies with the requirement. New Indy may have failed to install, calibrate, maintain, and operate a flow indicator on the steam stripper bypass line. All right, guys, this is going to have to be a 2-parter because we're already at 17 minutes. So thanks for listening along, rock stars. Sorry it's so long. You can thank the EPA, DHEC, and New Indy.